A German lieutenant colonel, wanting to accurately verify his judgment, ordered a prisoner of war to step down and stand still in the freezing seawater below 0 degrees. Then, to increase the extremity, the lieutenant colonel asked the prisoner to step deeper and sit down in the water. However, after only about 2 minutes, the prisoner's whole body began to shiver uncontrollably, clearly in a state of severe hypothermia and about to freeze to death. Immediately after, the lieutenant colonel proceeded with another prisoner, performing the same method. But it didn't take long for the second prisoner to also be pulled out, because he couldn't bear it. However, the results from both experiments did not give the lieutenant colonel the answer he expected. So he decided to do it himself. He took off his coat and then stepped into the water. When the water reached his waist, he started his stopwatch. The lieutenant colonel cursed loudly as he walked ashore. Although he possessed an exceptionally robust physique and superior endurance, he could only last a mere 10 minutes in those harsh conditions. All he was doing was for one sole purpose: to find the Norwegian soldier who had escaped the previous night. In 1940, when Nazi Germany invaded Norway and stationed troops in the northern part of the country, the United Kingdom, determined to eliminate the fascist forces, established an operational base in Norway. They selected and dispatched a group of 12 elite soldiers, forming a special Norwegian commando unit, and secretly infiltrated the German military base to collect top-secret intelligence. Unexpectedly during the mission, they were unfortunately discovered by German troops. As a result, the entire 12-man team was surrounded. One person was shot dead on the spot without reacting. 10 were captured, with only one person miraculously escaping. However, during the dangerous and harsh escape, the soldier was shot in the toe by German troops, causing unstoppable bleeding. Bright red streaks stained the cold white snow. Despite the extreme pain, the soldier did not pay attention to the physical suffering tormenting his body. He only knew to stand up again, struggling step by step in a limp state, trying his best to escape the pursuit. As night fell, German troops showed no intention of abandoning the search for the soldiers' whereabouts. They fired flares into the sky, illuminating the surroundings as if it were daylight, and then planned to more fiercely encircle and capture the soldier. Knowing he had nowhere left to hide, the soldier was forced to make a risky decision. He accepted the risk of freezing to death, determined to swim across the icy cold water to escape to the other side. After a while, when German troops tracked his footprints to a nearby location and found no trace of the soldier, a German officer dipped his hand into the cold water and, upon pulling it out, shuddered from the bone-chilling cold, concluding that no living creature could survive in such temperatures. Believing the soldier was dead, he decided to abandon the search and returned to report the situation to the lieutenant colonel. However, the lieutenant colonel was not one to easily believe in subjective assumptions. He was a person who always acted cautiously and rationally. The lieutenant colonel determined that the soldier was entirely capable of still being alive. Therefore, he immediately ordered his subordinate officers to continue the pursuit at all costs. If alive, he must be captured. If dead, his body must be found. On the other side, with extraordinary resilience, Jan bravely swam through the freezing seawater and successfully landed on the opposite shore. Exhausted, just when he thought he could no longer hold on and might freeze to death in the winter night, he unexpectedly met two kind young men. They found him in critical condition and immediately took him home for treatment. Jan was saved at the last minute, but after only a few days of rest, the bullet wound in his leg, sustained during his escape, became increasingly severe due to the cold. If not treated promptly, the infection would threaten his life. Recognizing the urgency, one of the young men quickly took Jan by boat across the strait and brought him to a doctor's house. There, the doctor immediately administered first aid to his leg wound, saving him from the risk of death. It was also at the doctor's house that Jan learned news that caused him immense pain. Through the doctor's account, he learned that for the past few days, German troops had relentlessly hunted him everywhere, And even more heartbreaking, all of his comrades, after being captured, had endured brutal and savage forms of torture, to the point that not a single one survived. All had been executed without mercy. Upon hearing this, Jan quietly stepped into a corner, unable to suppress his grief and torment. He burst into desperate sobs. Now, he was the last remaining hope of his entire unit. Because of this, he understood that no matter how difficult it was, he had to deliver this crucial intelligence at all costs. Immediately after, Jan sought out a local messenger. Jan clearly told the messenger that his goal was to reach Sweden, and from there continue his journey to the United Kingdom to hand over the intelligence to the Allied forces. However, the messenger warned Jan that to cross the border and enter Sweden, he would have to pass through a border area under strict German control. The commanding officer of that border camp was the lieutenant colonel, and he still suspected that Jan was alive, so he never relaxed the pursuit. The messenger advised him to be extremely cautious. Soon their boat had to stop because the water level was too shallow for the boat to dock. Thinking of Jan's health condition and severe leg wound, a stout local man had no choice but to carry him on his shoulders, wading through the water to bring him ashore. To avoid attracting the attention of German troops for the rest of the journey, Jan could only rely on a ski sled that the messenger had prepared for him. He disguised himself as a local to cross the border without being suspected. After many arduous days of moving through icy mountains, he finally approached the German guard post. However, faced with the large number of fully armed German soldiers, he couldn't help but worry and fear that his identity as a wanted criminal would be exposed. Because he was too stressed and afraid of being identified, Jan decided to speed up his skiing, hoping to quickly escape the dangerous area. But due to this haste, Jan slipped and fell to the ground, immediately attracting the attention of the German troops. In that moment, Jan tried to get up quickly and immediately leave the place. But just then, a cold and authoritative voice rang out from behind, ordering him to stop. This made Jan feel a lump in his throat, and the person who gave the order was the lieutenant colonel. However, the lieutenant colonel did not recognize Jan. He even stooped down to help him pick up his fallen hat. Jan knew it was not appropriate to say much at this time, so he simply replied with a thank you and immediately put on his hat and left. However, when Jan had gone quite a distance, the lieutenant colonel suddenly seemed to realize something. His gaze was fixed on the receding figure. Jan was skiing when suddenly a fighter plane flew over and circled above him. Feeling something was amiss, Jan was startled to realize that his identity as a wanted criminal might have been exposed. He immediately turned around and exerted all his strength to ski quickly down the mountainside. At the same time, the fighter plane also adjusted its course, beginning to frantically fire directly at him. Fortunately, Jan managed to dive and fall down in time. However, before he could fully recover, the plane quickly changed direction again and fired a second volley of bullets. Although the bullets did not hit Jan, the large impacts caused a terrible avalanche. Jan tried his best to ski as fast as possible to escape, but still could not overcome the terrifying speed of the falling snow. Finally, his entire body was completely buried under the thick layer of snow. The pilot at that time was confident that Jan had no chance of survival, so he withdrew with peace of mind. However, not long after, a miracle occurred. Jan, with extraordinary willpower, escaped from the cold white snow. His face at that time was covered with wounds. In a hazy and painful state, he still tried to rely on his survival instinct, using his bare hands to dig through the snow, determined to escape this white tomb. It is unknown how much time had passed, but Jan finally managed to climb out of the snowdrift. However, Jan's injuries were too severe for him to stand up and walk further. With no other choice, Jan had to use his wounded hands to painstakingly crawl on the snow, inching forward step by painful step, enduring the torment throughout his body. Jan did not abandon the mission he carried, which was to continue the intelligence transmission journey. Despite his injured body and almost exhausted strength, he slowly dragged his body forward like a living corpse. Finally, he stumbled into a roadside house. He collapsed on the spot. Fortunately, the family living in that house came to Jan's rescue. The woman secretly hid him in the attic of the barn. However, the German army did not give up on tracking Jan's whereabouts. The lieutenant colonel, with his keen insight and intuition, knew that despite being buried in the fierce avalanche, there was a high probability that he was still alive. Therefore, he personally led a group of soldiers here to search for him. When he arrived, he noticed that the local girl showed signs of anxiety, her expression tense, unable to hide her unease. The lieutenant colonel's vigilance immediately heightened, and from the girl's demeanor, he quickly discovered several suspicious clues. He followed her and walked straight towards the barn. Inside the barn, Jan clearly heard the footsteps and voices of the enemy echoing from below. He immediately hid deep inside the dry hay covering the attic, clutching his gun tightly, his eyes intensely staring down at the attic. After a moment, the lieutenant colonel slowly opened the barn door and entered cautiously. Jan's heart at this moment was pounding in his throat, beating wildly as if it wanted to burst out of his chest. Through the layer of dry hay covering his body, Jan could clearly see the lieutenant colonel's distinctive military cap peeking out below. But at that crucial moment, the Nazi insignia attached to the lieutenant colonel's chest suddenly fell off. So he immediately stopped, not continuing to thoroughly inspect the attic as originally planned, because honor to him was more important than anything else, even finding the enemy. But for fear of another German raid that could happen at any time, they secretly pulled Jan up the mountain, hiding him in a secret cabin, and also left him some essential survival items. That night, Jan was tormented by terrifying nightmares again. The long period of escape caused Jan severe mental deterioration. When he fell asleep again, a sudden sharp pain woke him up. He looked down at his foot, feeling something was wrong, then took off his sock and carefully opened the bandage. What he saw then was a horrifying sight. 2 of his toes were severely necrotic, and the wounds were even spreading and beginning to emit an extremely unpleasant foul odor. He knew that if he didn't deal with it in time, his life would end in this cold mountain wilderness. With an iron will and intense determination to survive, suppressing his fear, Jan began to cut into the necrotic flesh of his big toe. The intense pain made him unable to suppress his painful groans. When he had regained some composure, he took another sip of alcohol to dull the pain and then continued to cut off his second toe. After a while of struggling with the pain, Jan's second toe was finally successfully cut off. However, this time the unbearable pain had left him almost exhausted. Although his whole body was trembling from extreme pain, Jan endured, trying to use all his remaining strength to bandage his wounds himself. The accumulated fatigue from many days of fleeing, coupled with the intense pain he had just experienced, caused Jan to fall into a deep sleep, no longer aware of anything around him. Few days later, the villagers continued to help Jan find a way to cross the border into Sweden. They not only helped him find a safe route, but also personally made him a ski sled. Seeing the villagers busy preparing everything for him, Jan was deeply moved. He understood that without the silent and dedicated help from the people there, even if he was lucky enough not to fall into the hands of the German army, he would freeze to death and be exhausted in this harsh land of ice and snow. Aware of this, Jan became even more determined that he must survive, must successfully deliver the intelligence to help these good people soon be liberated from the brutal German fascist occupation. Finally, they hid him behind a safe and secluded stone wall. After making sure everything was settled, the villagers told Jan that the messenger would soon come to pick him up. However, as night deepened, Jan still did not see anyone coming for him. The cold night made him shiver continuously from the cold. Water dripping from the rock slabs froze on his face into sheets of ice, making even his sleeping bag damp and unable to keep him warm. It was not until the fourth day that the messenger returned to the village. He immediately asked why the villagers had not taken Jan to the meeting point yet. Only then did the villagers realize with shock that they had taken Jan to the wrong location. In a panic, they immediately gathered and quickly climbed the mountain to find him. When they arrived at his hiding place, they were horrified to see that it was covered by a thick layer of snow. Without hesitation, they hastily cleared the snow with the faint hope that Jan was still alive. When they dug a hole, they saw Jan, lying motionless there, his body covered in ice and snow, and seemingly no longer breathing. But at this very moment, Jan slowly opened his eyes, witnessing the scene. They quickly continued to clear the snow around him and pulled Jan out of the icy place. When he was brought out, both of them could not hide their surprise and immediately asked Jan how he could have survived for 4 days in such harsh conditions. Jan proudly and slowly took out a small sugar cube from his hand. It turned out that for those 4 days, he had survived on a single sugar cube and snow. After that memorable lesson, the villagers carefully marked Jan's hiding place and then quickly left. Not long after, the messenger finally found Jan. Due to the intense German pursuit, they could not travel during the day and were forced to set off at night. However, when they were about to reach the border, they discovered that the German army had intensified their control and patrols strictly along the border, to the point where even a mosquito would have difficulty getting through. Faced with this situation, they were forced to stop temporarily and hide in a cave, waiting for a more favorable time to continue their journey. One special day, which was also Norway's National Day, the messenger brought Jan good news that he could leave. Not only that, he also brought Jan a traditional cake to celebrate Norway's National Day. The messenger said that in the next few days, a herd of reindeer would migrate across the border area. He suggested that Jan hide among the reindeer herd, taking advantage of the number and chaos of the animals to avoid the eyes of the German guards. Without hesitation, Jan immediately agreed to this plan. Although this was a dangerous option, it was the only valuable glimmer of hope at the time. A few days later, as predicted, a large herd of reindeer began to run across the white snow. Jan lay hidden among the reindeer herd, pulled by a white reindeer. Jan sped towards the Swedish border with immense hope and faith. However, the sound of hundreds of reindeer hooves trampling on the icy snow quickly attracted the attention of the German soldiers. A few guards stood amazed at this spectacular sight. They completely failed to notice Jan hiding among them. But at this moment, Jan discovered that the rope tying the sled was loosening. He quickly reached out to grasp the rope, but unfortunately, it was too late. The sled unexpectedly lost its balance and overturned violently. This scene was unfortunately caught by the keen eyes of a German soldier. Jan was violently tossed around on the snow, his old wound severely affected to the point that he coughed up a large mouthful of blood. He used his last ounce of strength to flip the sled back over. Seeing the German soldiers chasing him from a distance, Jan struggled to slide behind the rocks. Soon after, 3 German soldiers closed in on him. Knowing he couldn't run any further, Jan helplessly lay behind the rock. Jan wanted to fight to the death until his last breath, but the German troops were numerous, and he only had 1 bullet left in his hand. As the footsteps of the German soldiers grew closer and closer, despair surged in Jan's heart. He raised his gun not to aim at the enemy, but to point it directly at himself. However, at that moment of life and death, the white reindeer that had pulled him earlier, like a guardian angel, suddenly reappeared before his eyes. This image ignited a spark of hope in Jan. Jan immediately grabbed the rope tethering the reindeer, reattached the sled, and tied it tightly to his hand. Without hesitation, he raised his gun to the sky and pulled the trigger. The loud gunshot startled the reindeer, and in an instant, the animal bolted forward with frantic speed, pulling Jan across the ice and snow. The German soldiers raised their guns and fired wildly at him, but fortunately, not a single bullet hit him. Finally, thanks to the superior speed of the reindeer and his intense will to survive, Jan crossed the border and officially set foot on Swedish soil. 3 months later, Jan was at the Allied headquarters. Here, he directly handed over the top-secret intelligence documents to his superiors. Everyone there called him a hero, praising his courageous spirit and extraordinary willpower. However, in his heart, Jan never considered himself a hero. To him, the Norwegian people who risked their lives to help, care for, and protect him throughout that arduous journey were the true heroes. Hi everyone, what do you think of the video? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you liked it, please give us a like and subscribe to support our channel for upcoming videos. Thank you all.